Hello, this is Dustin Luther here with Credit Safe, and I want to welcome everyone to our latest webinar. And I really couldn't be more excited than today to have George Bresler joining us to talk about what you should do when you're placed in collections. However, before we get started, I just thought I'd do just a minute of housekeeping here. One of the things I'd like to do is say that we want to make this a lively conversation and as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A button there at the bottom of your screen. Let us know, what your questions are, and I'll make sure to get those to George as we go along here. And the second thing I wanted to do was really just introduce, or I should say, the second thing I want to do is let you know that all of these presentations that we do at Credit Safe are posted to our YouTube channel, generally within a day. So we will be posting the recording of this as soon as we can, and then we will email out all attendees and everyone who's registered the link. So don't worry if you miss something. We're going to give you every opportunity you can to follow up and get that in the future. So with that said, George Bresler is the CEO and founder of GB Collects. GB Collects was started in 2000, so it's about 20 years old now, and has done, I believe I read it was $1 billion in debt recovery. So, not a small agency that he's been able to build up over the last 20 years. It's also worth noting that George is a founding member of the Commercial Collection Agencies of America, an organization that we had on a webinar yesterday. So if you're curious to learn more about that, please check out yesterday's webinar as well. So with that, George, I'd love just to start. Can you tell us a little bit about GB Collects and just kind of where you guys, where your background and where you guys specialize?
Great, thanks, Dustin, and hello, credit community. GB Collects is that. We're a business-to-business debt recovery firm. We handle most of the world. We're located out of New Jersey. We have 2 offices. We employ over 70 people, speak over 6 languages in a completely transparent, compliant environment. I've been in this business for 34 years, been lucky enough to own my own firm for the last 20, surrounded myself with some industry professionals that are hard to find. And for those of you in the business, you know what I'm talking about. Quality people in this business are very difficult to entertain and keep employed. And I've been able to do that for the last 20 years in a growing environment. We've won the Inc. 5000 for, I believe it's 6 years, 5 years in repetition, which is mathematically amazing. 6 years going, best places to work for the last 8 years. So creating a great work environment. We get into the weeds with your debt, and we handle just simply business-to-business debt recovery. Our collectors are trained and certified, which is important. Of course, we're all members of the Commercial Collection Agencies of America that provides that training and certification, and also audit. So whether you use me or anybody else in our industry, you want to make sure you're using an audited Commercial Collection Agencies of America certified firm.
Very cool. Well, let's dive right into this topic. Can you just kind of give us a sense of, what are the things to know if you're placed in collection? Give us the big picture. What does that typically look like, and what should somebody involved in that kind of, what are some highlights they should know? And then we'll get specific later on.
Yes. So there's a lot of emotion going on, right? You start off with anger, like, oh my God, how dare someone place me for collection? Then you get into a little bit of embarrassment, perhaps, like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed this, or can't believe we have a problem with this. There's a slew of emotions. What you don't want to do is sit there and let those emotions play on you. Placing for collection is not the end of the world. You want to understand, why was I placed for collections? Did I not pay something? Was it a disputed item? How do I decipher what collection means? We discussed in prior seminars, people being placed for collection and not realizing who the people are placing them for collection. Those people are your creditors. So they're coming to you and they're basically making a statement. And that statement is, hey, for whatever reason, you didn't honor your terms. What I always say is sit back a minute, read the information properly. Most good collection agencies are required to send you some type of communication ahead of time. You want to make sure that that communication is coming from a legitimate collection agency, number one, and you can look them up on many sites, even the state that you're in business in, they should be licensed. Secondly, you want to make sure that they're not the company themselves. A lot of times, creditors will employ their own collectors to act as a collection agency. I don't particularly sign on or agree with that strategy. It is out there. What I always say is look at the address to where the communication came from. If the creditor is in Canton, Ohio, chances are the collection agency should not be in Canton, Ohio at a similar PO box or address. It normally doesn't work that way. So you
out of curiosity, why is that an issue typically? Because I've seen that, you know, I've definitely seen that. I'm not sure why.
Well, it's a matter of escalation. If someone's giving you, oh, it's placed for collection, and there's still the internal creditor, it's just moved around internally. So you can still have a dialogue with your salesperson. You still have some relationship with the credit manager. You may even have a personal relationship with that salesperson and credit manager, which I suggest. If it's actually placed for collection, usually those ties are now burned at some level. If they're going to have to compensate an outside collection agency, they're not going to want to deal with you. However, if it's one of their own internal people handling a collection item, they'll probably take a phone call. That's why it's important. You're muted, Dustin.
Sorry about that. So, you know, you get that letter, or I assume the letter is typically the first communication.
Right.
You know, what would be what you mentioned, looking for the, you know, kind of doing your own due diligence, right? Like, is it a real collection? Who am I dealing with? Kind of do that,
Well,
some Googling.
Who, right? Who am I dealing with? Why is it owed? Is it a legitimate debt? One of the things that we promote is certification and doing business the right way. Obviously, there's a few bad actors in our industry. It's been there forever. People look for scams and everything else. What I always suggest is look at the initial creditor. Is it someone you recognize? Is the debt something you recognize? Is there, you know, shy of some basic business models, usually it's not a round dollar amount. Usually it's kind of, you know, offset. It's not usually, you know, $1,000 unless it's a deductible or some type of flat rate purchase. So look at the dollar amount, look at the age of the invoice. Make sure it's billed to the right people. Make sure your address is correct. Make sure your account number reflects who you are. Make sure it's not a problem like that. And then,
I was gonna say, yeah, after they've done that due diligence, so now you kind of do your homework, which
now you do your homework. You're getting hold of your payables. Hey, what happened here? Do your own investigation. Why wasn't it paid? Is it owed? Is it not owed? Is it disputed? What's the MO, right? What goes on behind the scenes? That's where every business owner has to do a little digging. I would suggest you do that digging and get those ducks in a row prior to communicating with your agency. I say your agency, the debt collection agency. We're not all big bad people who are out looking to make your life more miserable. As a matter of fact, we're here to resolve your problems. And that's what happens a lot of times. We actually get Christmas cards and thank you notes, believe it or not. The image is what we're trying to project is professionalism, more of a polished model, someone here to help versus someone causing problems. Over the years, the industry has had a lot of different images, right? People hear collection agency, they expect some, you know, some bald, shady looking guy in a boiler room making outbound phone calls. That's not the point. The point is we have a professional work environment. We're here to resolve the issues. So,
totally makes sense. So you know, one of the things I'd love to dive into is let's split the two options, right? One of them, it's a legit debt. You did your research. You're like, oh yeah, like we were supposed to pay that. You know, or you know, hey, I've had to lay off a bunch of employees. Like we have a cash flow issue. It could be for whatever reason, but there's a legit debt there. And then there's the one that it's not legit. And I think they're worth handling separately. Like, let's start with the first one. Like something's legit. You did your homework. You can't pay it all up right now. Like what's the right way to do it? Or maybe you can pay it, but just like what should be your steps?
Well, there's many options. You have legit, not legit, and kind of legit, right? So sometimes maybe it's a disputed invoice, maybe it's completely disputed, maybe it's completely owed. Let's start with the completely owed invoice. You look at it, you know, this is the time for your mea culpa. This is the time for you to say, hey, it's legitimate, I missed it. Or, hey, communicate with us, have a dialogue. And that's really what it all comes down to. On any one of those levels, what we ask and what makes life simpler for everybody is have that dialogue. Stand up to the issue. Have a conversation with us. If it's a money issue, we're more than happy to work with you. If it's a dispute issue, doing your due diligence, we'll hopefully have some type of documentation and or rhetoric to dispute the validation or the validity of the debt. That's what we want to hear. That's what we want to see. If you come to me on a large dollar debt and you say you have cash flow problems, make the message legitimate. Don't tell me you're flying to Hawaii for a month. Tomorrow you got to get off the phone, but you're having cash flow problems. It makes it tough to swallow. And conversely, if you're legitimately disputing a debt, say so. Have a reason for it. Document it. You know, a lot of times we look at these things and we get anger. That's one of the other issues. You get angry, one of the other emotions. You look at it, you go, oh, I'm not paying these guys. How dare they bill me? How dare they bill me a freight charge or a shipping charge? Have that conversation with us. More often than none, we're able to maneuver around those smaller obstacle charges. Or if it's an older debt, we may be embraced or empowered, you will, to negotiate a little bit. Of course, if you're looking to negotiate with us, have the cash available. Nobody likes to negotiate on future assessments.
Totally makes sense. So
Right.
we did get one question from someone named Paul. He was asking, is this like having them validate the debt? And I think he's talking about himself. What does that mean?
Right. So a lot of people, first thing they do is they run to Google, right? Google, Google, Google. I've been placed for collection. What do I do? And, you know, there's a million experts out there and a million experts will tell you, don't communicate with them. Don't pay them. Don't do this. Those same experts aren't paying your legal bills. So maybe you want to follow just along a little bit. The validation portion of that is a FDCPA portion that requires individuals to dispute a debt and ask the collection agency to validate it. It's basically asking the collection agency to show their cards if we were playing poker. Let's show. Let's see what you got. Let's see the documentation. Let's validate the existence of the debt. And that's fine. We can do that in a commercial environment also. Different parameters a little bit. I will tell you, Paul, thanks for the question. Many great commercial collection agencies will abide by the FDCPA guidelines anyway. As we want to be compliant and we want to make sure the people we're dealing with, when that transaction is over, they feel good about it. They're not walking away feeling jilted or mad. You know, think about a commercial environment. And Paul, I don't know your situation about validation, but I can tell you this. Think about a commercial environment. That company spends a lot of money on marketing and advertising and setting up products and getting them shipped out to you. The last thing they want to do is not back it up. They have the documentation, they have the substantiation for it. And I can tell you also, as a collection agency owner, my staff and I, we validate the business coming in the front door. We want to make sure it's legitimate. We refuse to represent any business that has any shaky ground on it. It must be solid footing of a legitimate debt.
It completely makes sense. And it's interesting, and that's part of why you talk about working with these, why people should be working with, you know, companies like that are part of these large organizations like the commercial collection agencies of America, those kinds of things. You want these to be working with commercial collection agencies that aren't doing shady practices.
Right. You have to make sure the people you're dealing with are licensed, bonded, and insured. Again, for any questions about this stuff, ask away. And secondly, if you're questioning the validity of your collection agency that's contacted you, look us up. Go to the states. Most states right now, there are, I believe there's 23 states that require licensing for commercial agencies. We go above and beyond. We license as much as we can in every state. There are a few jurisdictions where licensing is not available. Some use reciprocal agreements, et cetera, et cetera. But the states are very candid about it. Most state Secretary of States have direct links to the registration of it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure we're legitimate also.
Completely
Once
makes
the
sense.
legitimacy is validated, though, and you can prove that you're dealing with a legitimate agency, a lot of people have call reluctance, right? Nobody wakes up and goes, oh, I can't wait to talk to my collection agency today. So obviously that's not a phone call you're making money on. It's not a phone call where usually you're happy about it. But we're not here to insult you. We're not here to bite your head off. We're here to resolve a potential problem. Typically, we like to resolve them in office. Some people decide to go directly to our clients behind our back. That's fine too. But keep in mind, our clients are contractually obligated to us in most cases on a contingent basis. So whether you pay them or you pay us, it doesn't make a difference, frankly. We act as one in that effort.
So, I don't know that we got a chance to dive because of the great question for Paul here, but I want to dive into what if you feel like it's not a legitimate.
Oh, great. Yeah, sure. So first thing you want to do is get your ducks in a row, document. If it's not legitimate, we'll be the first people to listen, receive your documents, validate a disputed debt, and then communicate with our client and attempt to resolve it. Many times our clients are not hearing about the disputed debt firsthand. Sometimes credit managers may not put that at a more of a pinnacle point of a discussion with their boss. Those things are sometimes, if it's disputed to a salesperson who maybe is compensated off sales, maybe they don't want to go back to their boss and say, hey, this is a disputed invoice. Let me get my commission payment first, one of those things. So many times when we're bringing up the dispute, the client's unaware of it. Sometimes if you have billing companies that are doing billing for people, they're never aware of it. So it's good to have that dialogue. And, not every collection item results in a customer being lost. As I earlier stated, many customers spend a lot of money preparing products and marketing and sales and compliance and licensing. They don't want to lose your business. They just want to be honored for the extension of credit they gave out.
Completely makes sense. So, one of the things in our earlier conversations, you were talking about like kind of really understanding your own end game. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
like
right.
what might that look like for a typical person that's been placed in collections?
So, some people are placed for collections for various reasons. It could be cash flow. It could be, unfortunately, personal strife, be it marriage, divorce, death, what have you. I probably should have said divorce and death, not marriage. Right? But the bottom line is everybody has an end game. Some people will buy off you one time and never intend to pay you from the get-go and think because you're out of state or out of reach, they're never going to communicate with you. That does happen on occasion, but it's on occasion. Typically, guys like us are employed and we come out and that's all we do is find you and bring it up to you. So on those people with an end game, some people run, but they can't hide type thing. We don't want to get to that point. We want to understand what the point is. If the point is, hey, I don't have the cash and I use your client a little bit as a credit extension, let's work it out. Maybe it's a matter of dispute. Maybe you have product to return. Maybe you could offer up a personal guarantee or some of these items that may quell the collection environment. So there are solutions to that. If the end game is I pay my bills on time all the time right away, maybe that's a great end game. Maybe you'll never be placed for a collection, but that's maybe a conversation you wish to have with your credit manager. So I want to bring up a term that we use, and you use a different term. We use DSO, right? Day sales outstanding or day sale outstanding. You use in the credit safe world, DBT, days beyond terms. They're exactly the same thing. Just different terminology. Why is that important? It's important to you as a borrower or a client because you need to understand that in the credit management world, we're not looking so much at your $1,000 debt. We're looking so much at the days beyond terms. That speaks volumes. When clients go out to borrow money, banks want to know what's your DSO or your DBT because they want to be able to gauge the value of your receivables on the street. If your DBT or DSO is 300, the bank's going to look at that and go, hey, man, you guys have all your money out over a year old. You don't put too much stock in it, but you're asking to borrow money and use your receivables as collateral. Well, that collateralized asset doesn't have the value you think it does after a year. And I can prove that the GAO of the US government produces a list every year, General Accounting Office, outlining the value of a past due receivable. And after a year, that receivable drops to a 61% plus or minus
Yep.
value. So that $1 million receivable, it's not $1 million receivable after a year. It's worth 600 grand. It's important to know. And that's important to understand when dealing with your credit manager. If you're making payments on that account, that DSO is open, but it still shows money moving. That's helpful.
You know, one of the things that I think it's almost like it is. I love this DBT and DSO conversation, but I have one thing that I've been thinking about a little bit here, and it's, you know, more the what kind of terms will a commercial collection agency typically offer? What, like, is there any insight you can give to somebody to go, I mean, I don't want to like ruin your game, but at the same time, like, is it typical to say like, I'm going to pay this quarterly? I mean, I know it probably amounts to the amount of debt and all that kind of stuff, but like, what should I be looking for if I'm the one placing collection to negotiate? What leverage do I have?
So here's a couple things. First of all, if you're trying to settle the account, if it's disputed, or if you just don't have a lot of cash and you're trying to settle, we're pretty good negotiators, but understand something. When we negotiate a debt payoff, if you come to me and you owe $12,562 and you offer me, and you say, oh, you know, I'm looking at my receivables and my cash, and I can give you $1,000. I go, wow, $1,000 on 12 grand. Thanks, but that's like, you know, 9%. No thanks. And then I'll try to flip that around a little bit, because you're using round numbers. And I'm going to say to you, what's your debt to equity calculation in your bank account? And you go, oh, you know, we have 23%. And I say, why didn't you offer me 23%? You know, you owe 12 grand. Why didn't you offer me 13,000 bucks, $1,300 or something? And oftentimes people negotiate using round numbers. And what we want to try to get across is, if my client's going to take a bath, be it a legitimate bath. Make sure that bath has some financial documentation, substantiation to it. Don't just throw out round numbers and hope that someone's going to bite at it. That may happen, but we like legitimate numbers. Secondly, if you're going to make payments on a payment plan, understand something. My client had a payment plan with you too. And unfortunately, that payment plan didn't work out well. So we're looking for something short-term. We're looking for something reasonable. You know, you can't offer $5 on 5,000. I hear a lot of people go, oh, you have to take it. Not in a commercial environment, I don't. In a consumer environment, I would be enticed to take it, so that if it ever got to an FDCPA dispute or a legal suit, you could always say, oh, we offered something. However, in a commercial environment, we're not restricted by those rules. So try to keep in mind, we like to get it returned quickly. For those clients, it's also, again, eating into their DSO unless they write the debt off. So we like to get that stuff wrapped up quick. If you don't have the cash, we'll work with you.
Totally makes sense. So actually, Paul came back with another question.
Sure.
I want to read it here to make sure I'm not missing stuff. But he says, you know, how does what you do affect both, you know, your D&B and possible someone else's credit report? Let's throw credit safe in there for the pod. So how is this going to affect your? Oh no, this is someone's personal credit report, but both your personal and your business credit report. And if they pay it, would you remove any negative from their report? I think he's referring to like the agency, you know, what's your role in that?
So there's two models of this, Paul, and there's one model, and let's start with commercial business first, okay? Just so we're crystal clear. In the commercial markets, there are agencies that report and agencies that don't report. For the agencies that do report, different credit reporting companies, and Dustin, I'll yield to you guys. I can tell you from a Dun & Bradstreet model on the DBT report, which is their basic, a BIR report, excuse me, which their business information report. It's kind of vague. Companies can report someone for collection. It just says place for collection on such a date and such a dollar amount. But then it gives a disclaimer underneath it, and it says The existence of a debt placed for collection does not take into consideration missed invoices, disputes, et cetera, et cetera. So for the Dun& Bradstreet folks out there, you know, that disclaimer hurts your integrity on it a little bit because it leaves it open-ended. It does not list the initial creditor. So again, it's open-ended. Sometimes, and I believe on the credit safe stuff, if I'm not mistaken, Dustin, you guys have a industry listing. So if it's telecom, it's telecom, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of those things. You do hide the name of the initial creditor, if I'm not mistaken also. However, they do show up. Now, to answer Paul's question, Paul, if you have 1,000 vendors or 1,000 creditors who you're borrowing a product or on terms with, and one or two of them have problems, it's not a big problem. It shows as a small delinquency. However, if you do business with 10 of vendors and now two of those people you're having a problem with, now 20% of your creditors are going south. That's a problem. As far as the commercial side, that's pretty much how it works. Reports are made to the credit bureaus. They're logged in as placed for collection. Each credit bureau, and I'll stick to Credit Safe's model, not just because you're hosting it, but you're also good people.
Oh, thank you.
Keeps it very clean and concise, and we appreciate that in the industry. Now, moving on to the consumer side, again, as this world turns with regulation, compliance, state regulators, each state's different, who needs what, reporting on personal credit is a whole different animal. You're responsible for updating credit, you're responsible for updating disputes, you're responsible for answering inquiries, and that puts a lot of responsibility on the agencies and or the credit reporting firms. So we don't do any personal reporting at all by design. We just don't subscribe to that side of the business.
Oh, this is very cool. Well, I know we wanted to keep this conversation to 30 minutes and we've got 2 minutes left now. I'm looking at the time there. So we've done great. It just went so fast, a half an hour conversation. But I think I want to have my last question be just what did I miss? What should I be asking? Or what should a concern be from a company that, has gone into placement?
Yeah, let me pull back the screen a little bit. We're all business people, okay? Collection agencies like my own work on a contingency basis. We don't get paid until we collect. Hence, that creates an incentive to us to never let go. How do you avoid that? How do you get by it? Talk to us. We're human. Have a dialogue with us. Communicate with us. Be polite. I'm polite to you. I'm required to be polite to you, but I'm going to be polite to you regardless because my clients mean the world to me. We put them on a silver platter because we believe in their product and their service. And understand, good collection agencies like my own, we don't want to represent shaky creditors. It's not what we do. We're in business to collect money. So if we represent shaky creditors, we're not going to get paid. Hence, we don't make any money. Not that we're not good at it, but this is not a hobby. So we're here to make a buck. Have a dialogue with us. We're not going to bite your head off. We're here to resolve it. If we can resolve it, great. If not, we'll even give you some guidance on how to resolve things on your end of the business.
Well, George, thank you so much. I've been fortunate to meet with you a few times at different events around the country, and just every interaction we've ever had, I've always enjoyed it. You have just such a wonderful personality. You always bring a smile to everyone around you. So thank you so much for just being an awesome person as well as joining us here on this latest Credit Safe webinar.
You got one more question over there?
Oh yeah, what was his company? Oh, I think his company again. So GB Collects?
GB Collects. We're in Voorhees, New Jersey. gbcollects.com, gbcollects.com, and we're here to help. So give a call and look forward to meeting you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Bye for now.
Bye.